Sleep paralysis. It sounds almost clinical, doesn't it? A mere curiosity of the sleeping mind. But the reality is far from academic. It is a deeply personal terror. The mind snaps awake. It becomes horribly acutely aware. Yet the body remains stubbornly, terrifyingly asleep, locked, immobile, a prisoner in your own flesh. This state, this unseen binding, is more common than one might think. Many people experience it at least once, a fleeting moment of disorientation. For others, it is a recurring nightmare, a familiar dread that waits in the quiet hours. Each episode feels unique. Each visitation of that profound stillness is etched into memory. Throughout history, people sought explanations. They whispered of demons pressing down on chests, of night hags and shadowy spirits. Fear, you see, has a powerful way of shaping our perception. It paints the unknown with the darkest colors imaginable. I drifted in that space between worlds. Not quite asleep, not truly awake. A strange, disorienting consciousness began to surface. My eyelids fluttered, or perhaps I only imagined they did. The room around me was dark, still, but something felt profoundly wrong. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, a silent alarm ringing in my mind. I was surfacing, but to what? A deep, pervasive unease settled over me. It started as a faint prickle, a sense of being watched. I tried to move, to shift my arm, to twitch a finger. Nothing, absolutely nothing responded to my command. My limbs felt like stone, heavy, impossibly heavy, as if an enormous weight pressed down upon them, pinning me to the mattress, a silent, unyielding force. The realization dawned slowly, then with a sickening rush. I couldn't move, not an inch. My body was a statue, but my mind was horribly, vividly awake, trapped. This was it, that dreaded state I had read about. My bedroom. It had always been my sanctuary, my safe haven from the world. But now it felt alien, hostile. The familiar contours of the room were distorted, warped by the dim moonlight that filtered through the curtains. It cast long dancing shadows across the walls, shadows that seemed to writhe and twist, taking on monstrous shifting shapes. They pulsed with a life of their own. Familiar objects took on a menacing air. The tall wardrobe in the corner loomed like a silent sentinel. Its door was slightly ajar, revealing a sliver of deeper, more profound darkness within. Was something hiding there, watching from that sliver of black? Everything was a threat. The silence was the worst part, a heavy, oppressive silence that pressed in on me. It was so profound, so absolute. I could hear the frantic thumping of my own heart, a desperate drumbeat against the stillness. It echoed in my ears. My mind raced, a frantic torrent of thoughts, tumbling over each other in a desperate cascade. What was happening to me? Why was this happening? Why now in the dead of night? Fear was no longer just an emotion. It became a living thing, a cold, coiling presence within me. It whispered insidious doubts. It painted horrifying possibilities. It held me captive. I tried to call out, to scream for my mum, for anyone who might hear, for anyone who could break this awful spell. But my voice was stolen, snatched away before it could form. Only a faint, choked gasp escaped my lips, a pathetic, soundless plea, lost in the oppressive stillness of the room. No one could hear me. No one knew the terror I was enduring. The effort to move was immense, agonizing. I pushed against the invisible bonds with all my mental strength, willing my muscles to obey, to twitch. Then a new sensation began to creep in, subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A distinct feeling of presence, a chilling certainty that I was no longer alone in the darkened room. Something else was there with me, sharing the suffocating silence, its attention fixed solely on me. Watching, waiting, an unseen entity. It started with a slight shift in the air, a cold spot that seemed to materialize near the side of my bed. The hairs on my arms prickled and stood on end. Gooseflesh crawled across my skin despite the warmth of my duvet. It was a coldness that emanated from no discernible source, a chill that seeped into my bones, a warning. Faint sounds began to intrude upon the silence, not the familiar creaks of the house settling for the night. My eyes, wide and unblinking, darted towards the darkest corner of the room. The shadows there, they seemed to deepen, to coalesce, to gather substance from the surrounding gloom. Slowly, a vague form began to emerge, tall and indistinct, a pillar of concentrated darkness against the lesser dark. It was there. It was undeniably there. It wasn't human, not in any recognizable sense. It was more a suggestion of a form, a silhouette of pure dread. My eyes strained in the dim light, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, to find some familiar feature, some anchor of reality. But there was none. Only an ever-shifting, ill-defined mass that seemed to absorb the very light around it. There was no face, no discernible features, just an oppressive, featureless darkness. Yet I felt it looking at me. I could sense its unwavering attention, its gaze fixed upon me with a chilling intensity, a malevolent focus that pierced through the gloom. It knew I was aware. It knew I was trapped. An immense weight settled upon my chest, crushing, making each breath a labored effort. It felt as if the very air was being squeezed from my lungs, as if the presence itself was pressing down on me, suffocating me slowly. The pressure was unbearable, a physical manifestation of the encroaching dread. My ribs ached with the strain. The shadowy figure in the corner seemed to move. It didn't walk. It glided, flowing like thick smoke across the floor. Slowly, deliberately, drifting towards my bed with an unnerving, silent grace, an inch at a time, relentless in its advance. Each imperceptible movement ratcheted up my terror. There was no escape, no retreat, only its steady, patient approach. I squeezed my eyes shut tight, a desperate, childish attempt to make it all disappear. If I couldn't see it, perhaps it wasn't real. But the feeling only intensified. The crushing pressure on my chest increased. I fought with every ounce of will I possessed. A desperate internal battle waged in the terrifying stillness. I focused all my energy, trying to break free from the invisible chains, to move a single finger, to twitch a toe, to make any sound that might shatter the oppressive silence, to scream out the terror that was consuming me whole. The paralysis held firm, like unyielding iron bands wrapped around my limbs, around my throat. My will crashed against an unseen, immovable enemy. A silent, solitary battle fought in the deepest recesses of my mind and lost in the suffocating stillness of my own bedroom. There was no give, no release, only the stark reality of my complete and utter helplessness. The figure was beside my bed now, looming over me like a dark, terrible monolith. I could feel its cold aura, its oppressive presence blanketing me. I imagined I could feel its cold, empty gaze boring into me, even with my eyes squeezed shut. Terror reached its peak, a crescendo of pure, unadulterated fear. And then, as suddenly and inexplicably as it had begun, it was over. A violent jolt, as if an electric current had coursed through me. A sharp, ragged gasp tore from my throat. I could move. My arms shot out, flailing wildly, knocking my bedside lamp askew. The spell was broken. The chains had vanished. I was free. I sat bolt upright in bed, panting heavily, my heart still racing like a runaway train. My pajamas were damp with cold sweat. I scanned the room frantically. The shadows were just shadows now, cast by the familiar furniture. The wardrobe door was still slightly ajar, but the deeper darkness within held no menace. The figure was gone, vanished as if it had never been. But the fear lingered, a cold, sticky residue, clinging to me like a shroud. The memory of the past minutes or hours was intensely vivid, too real to be dismissed as a simple dream. The pressure, the whispers, the shape. It was all seared into my mind. Was it truly over? Or was it merely waiting? biding its time in the shadows of my mind.